So let's get right into something that you will not believe. Of all the strange adoption stories out there, very few are as unbelievable as the case of Natalia Grace. Watch.
You may remember the unusual story of Natalia Grace, a Ukrainian orphan with severe dwarfism adopted by the Barnett family in Indiana, then allegedly abandoned years later.
Then out of nowhere, we got a phone call from an adoption agency in Florida. They had reached out to us and they said, hey, we've got the perfect child for you. Here's all we're gonna give you. Here's 2 pictures. Here's a Ukrainian language birth certificate. And here's 1 doctor visit from 2 years before. You have 24 hours to tell us whether or not you want to adopt her. We went and signed paperwork, and the next thing you know, Natalia was ours.
They began to suspect things were not what they seemed with Natalia.
Now we're very concerned and very worried. Is Natalia 6? Is she older? We would find knives under her bed. There was a moment when I woke up in the middle of the night and Natalia was standing over my bed with a knife in her hand. She began to attempt to harm my sons in a very serious manner.
I'm going to kill you, you you're gonna die.
She was re-aged as a 22-year-old and given an apartment. She was then taken in by another family nearby a year later.
Prosecutors allege that in July of 2013, the Barnetts left their daughter in the Lafayette apartment, then moved to Canada.
For years, her story was scrutinized.
A 6 or 7-year-old child living in an apartment alone for a year? That's just not believable to me. Are you a 33-year-old scam artist?
No.
But what if that is not the full story?
A woman who claims to be Natalia Barnett's biological birth mother has come forward to say that she is a child.
What if this adult, pretending to be a child, was actually a child the entire time? Will we ever learn the truth of what happened? Only time will tell.
Wow, joining us now to talk all about the curious case of Natalia Grace, please welcome to the show veteran legal expert Beth Karras.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So let's just go to the start. How did Natalia come into the Barnett family's lives?
She had been adopted by a family in New Hampshire about 2 years earlier in 2008 when she was supposedly 4 years old and unloaded. They didn't want her after about a year, it appears. They were trying to pass her off, almost sell her to another little family, little people family a couple of times. And when that was unsuccessful, they dropped her off at an adoption agency in Florida. Now, they were from New Hampshire. And that's when the Barnetts got the call that they had 24 hours to come and get this little girl, or else she was going to be turned over to foster care. And that was in 2010, so they thought they were adopting a 6-year-old.
So when did the Barnett family begin to suspect that maybe she was much older?
Almost immediately. There were signs almost immediately when Christine, the mother, gave her a bath. They were still in Florida, hadn't gotten back to Indiana yet. And she noticed that Natalia was very mature sexually. She had pubic hair. And they thought, well, she's 6 years old, so what's going on here? Were they off by a few years or more than a few years in her age?
Now, the answer to Natalia's age is still, I can't believe this, still a mystery. In actuality, how old was Natalia while this was going on?
Well, we don't know for sure.
Right.
If you believe her Ukrainian birth certificate, she was actually 8 years old when she was re-aged to 22 and left on her own in an apartment that was not modified for someone with a disability.
Oh,
She's
my
a little
gosh.
person. This was a hall, counters and bathtub and sinks, and wasn't modified for her. But yet she was 8 years old. The 8-year-olds can live on their own.
Wow. All right, follow up to that. Do you feel like the stories of her plotting to kill the family, which we all know as the narrative, some people are saying that was made up. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there may be some truth to it, but you have to consider that it's really just coming from the Barnetts, right? There's no corroboration of that. And perhaps they're making it worse than it was. But you have to consider also that Natalia may have been acting out. If she was a child, we don't know what those first years of her life were like. Was she sexually abused? If she didn't know boundaries, was she... I don't know, just kind of engaging in some sort of self-protection, some mechanism that was triggered because of her past.
Right, that's where my mind went. But I have to ask you this, because I know you've uncovered everything in this story. If the Barnetts were making this up, what do you believe? Do you believe that there was some sort of motive to distance themselves from her? What do you think that is?
Well, once their son Jacob got a full scholarship to Canada, I mean, they really did have a hard time with Natalia, whether it was their fault or hers or a combination. That is the truth. And they wanted to unload her. She was theirs legally, but I think they wanted to get to Canada and get Jacob educated, bring their sons with them. And they had her re-aged, and it was a way to just kind of get rid of her. So that could be one motive, because they claim they tried to use other resources. They tried to get psychological help for her and police. And I mean, they said, no, she's your problem, basically. So they're like, okay, we're going to get rid of our problem. We're going to do it legally.
I have to ask, does anybody know where she is now?
Yes, she's in Indiana. She was taken in by another family, and she is older, well-adjusted. She's either 19, turning 20 later this year, or 34, depending on what you believe. Wow. And she's doing quite well.
Wow, Beth, this case is absolutely crazy. Thank you for sharing your expert analysis. DBL Nation, the curious case of Natalia Grace continues tonight on ID. Thank you so much, Beth.
Thanks.
We appreciate you.
Thanks.
We'll be right back. Thank you.